Welcome to the Better Me, A Better You, A Better Us podcast series at the School of Dentistry here at the University of Leeds. I'm Tamora Shenwood and I'm the academic lead for Inclusive Pedagogies, aka the CELIP. And today I will be your host. I'm joined today by Pastoral Care and Wellbeing Advisor Liz Bridger and DENSOC President and Save Our Advocate Gaurav Bhardwaj. Together we're going to be exploring the balance and benefits of selfless service and self-care. Liz, Gaurav, thanks for joining me.
Hi guys.
Hello, good to be here.
Pleasure to be here today on this fine Friday morning of the last day of school.
Now, I think you'll both agree with me that considering the needs of someone else is a win-win. If you feel good, they feel good, everyone wins. But I also recognise that if I'm in an environment where, say, I don't feel respected, I don't feel seen or valued, then I've actually got less to give to others. So my well-being, I would say, is intrinsically linked to the well-being status of others. And I suppose this is where the idea of selfless service and self-care gets both interesting and really complicated. I think, Gaurav, when you first spoke about the concept of Save Our at the launch of A Better Me, A Better You, A Better Us, it was definitely the first time I'd ever heard of Save Our. And I was struck by the power of its simplicity and its purity. But for others like me who maybe aren't familiar with the concept of Save Our, could you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so Save Our stems from the Dharmic faiths, so that's from Hindu background, Sikh, Jain, Buddhist, and it loosely translates to selfless service. It's not the pure definition, and it is something that it's very hard to capture within the English language. But it is a value of giving to the world and helping others out from the place of your heart. And it's very beautiful and it's very hard to capture within words. Obviously, I'll try my best on the podcast here. But it's very powerful in the sense of you're giving without expectation. You're giving from a place of compassion, of care, of love, and it's all different definitions to support everyone and make sure everybody around you is winning and making sure that, you know, we're all in it together and you can see past. And there's so many different layers to it and it's quite difficult to break down, but it's more of a way of life, if you get what I mean. And Mahatma Gandhi really kind of captures this really well with one of his sayings, which was, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. And for me, it's very powerful that we all have, let's say, a reputation, we all have an image we want to portray ourselves. But when we operate from a place of Save Our, when we operate from a place of being selfless and giving back to the world and back to others, we kind of tear apart that image that we tried to construct, and we kind of go back to where we are at heart. And it's a good place to center yourself and really make sure that you're transforming the world where you can. I think a lot of people kind of confuse Save Our with charity. And, you know, for me, they're two very different constructs. I mean, at the end, yeah, you might be doing good, but Save Our is such a value-driven thing, whereas charity, in my eyes, you know, is an external experience. And we think of charity of, oh, let me give money to the homeless people, or let me, you know, donate my old stuff. And, you know, while the intentions may be pure or maybe for, like you said, the imagery of getting something out there, Save Our comes with different forms and, you know, it's much deeper and much more grounded within that experience. So for me, the aim of the impact is different. For charity, like you said, it's an external giving. It's quite limited what you can do, what you can call charity. Whereas Save Our, having that Save Our mindset is much grounded, it's much more deeper, it's much more, you know, widespread and much more rooted. So for me, Save Our comes from gratitude. So when you have charity, you normally think of the person receiving something as, oh, thank you. Whereas if you have that civic mindset, it's more of a, I am thankful to be in a position to serve the world.
I think it's really interesting hearing you talk about Save Our as values, because, and those links with dental school actually, because so many dental students that I speak to talk about their main motivation for getting through dental school, which we know is not an easy task, is about helping others. But also that kind of idea of hierarchy I think is really interesting, because from what I understand of dentistry, there can be those dynamics at times. But that mindset shift you talked about with I get to serve others feels like a really powerful one on those tough days when clinics, back to back and running late. That mindset of I get to serve these patients, I get to help them. That seems really powerful.
It's powerful. Words can really change the way your day goes. So in a way, that is Servo. If you're bringing your best self to the table and people can feel that effect, it just makes the day better for everyone, and it has that widespread, impact on the community. And it doesn't have to be anything big. It doesn't have to be, the biggest project ever. Just having a nice conversation, just giving gratitude, or keeping the door open, saying thank you, and being specific with it as well, and really making that impactful and personalized to each person you come across is just, different levels to it.
And I think those little examples are really important, that it could be formal volunteering as a way of giving to your community, but it's the smaller acts of service, the things that are so easily forgotten but could actually make the biggest difference to someone's day. As you said at the beginning, Tamora, it's that win-win, isn't it?
And I think if I reflect on 2 instances actually involving both of you, where actually those really small acts made a massive difference to me in that day. I think it wasn't the act itself. It was that both of you managed to make me feel seen. And made me feel that it was okay, that I was doing okay. Regardless of what it was you were seeing, you kind of validated me as I was rather than asking for perfection. And that had massive impact. So with Liz, Liz caught me on the corridor after I was having a slightly traumatic time with some dental foundation trainees, and she's like, "You all right?" I'm like, "No, not all right." Busied off, and then when I came back to my office, there was just a little brown paper bag hung on the outside of my door with a twirl in it, and there was no ceremony, no anything big. It was just, "I've seen you. Here you go." And that had more of an impact on my day, my life, than loads of big gestures that I've been involved with. And equally, I've received an impromptu voice note from Gaurav one morning, just saying that he sees me as someone who lives their values. And, different things. I was actually in need with you, and you were just kind of saying, "This is how I see you." And both of them took time, took you thinking, you serving me, but actually really helped me to raise my game again, find that energy to keep doing what I needed to do. You empowered me to keep going with tiny gestures, a voice note and a twirl on your door. Who knew?
But I guess that's the win-win side of it, isn't it? Being able to hang a chocolate bar on someone's door and run away giggling. She didn't even know it was me at first. That's, I don't know, being able to approach this kind of stuff with a bit of lightness as well. I think that's what we sometimes need, isn't it?
And I think those kind of acts are so pure, and it's give and take, where we give something of our own time, where we give that love from our side, so to be it, and you receive it on your side as well. And I think in those moments, and linking back to Servar operates from a place without, intention for rewards or recognition or expectations. It all comes from compassion and care, and there's no expectations tied to it. For me, for example, with the voice note, I didn't expect, tomorrow's going to send me a 2-3 in a voice note back saying, you're sick and this and that. I just wanted to operate that from my place from my heart, and just make sure that she feels heard and listened to, because it helps. You don't know what everyone's going through, and if you can do something to leave the world in a better place, then why would you not do that? And not in a place, well, we'll talk about this later, where you kind of keep giving, and, not maintaining yourself, but making sure that you're overflowing with so much kind of compassion and care that it just exudes out and everybody around you can feel it, because stuff like that is contagious. If you're feeling so good, you're feeling so blessed, and you feel so deep rooted, people, when they meet you in a corridor, in a meeting, or wherever you're going to be, your patients in the healthcare profession, they're going to feel that for them, and that's going to transform their day, and then they're going to go home, or they're going to go wherever, and they're going to feel that they're going to pass on to whoever it is. And just that one small act of, let me just operate from care. There's no ego involved. There's no, expectations of awards or recognition. If you operate from such a pure place and you send that out, then it's going to just be transformative for everyone.
But don't you think that's an interesting thing? Because I love what you're saying about the purity of the intention. You didn't send that voice note to get anything back. You just did that as an act of kindness.
Yeah.
But, okay, my reference is a little bit more lowbrow than yours. It got me thinking about that episode of Friends when Phoebe is trying to find a selfless
Yeah.
And I guess that links with what we're talking about here of how it is win-win because you get something back. And me doing a kind gesture for Tamora, it did affirm my identity of I am a kind person.
Yeah.
So I would love to think that my intentions are pure, and maybe they are at times, but equally, one of the themes here is about how being kind to others and being part of a community and giving others does fill up our own cups.
Yeah.
Whether that's in an identity way or just that little boost of I don't know what hormone it would be, but cuddle hormone or oxytocin.
Serotonin, oxytocin.
Not that I'm cuddling you in the corridor, but that feel-good hormone, right?
Yeah.
So it's that interesting thing, isn't it, of what comes first? Am I doing something kind to somebody else and then it makes me feel good?
Yeah.
Or do I need to keep being kind to others and serving others in order to be okay myself? I mean, like I said before about dental students being motivated to help their patients, I'm in the kind of role I'm in because I find it very rewarding to support others. Yeah. So I don't know, it's that chicken and egg thing, isn't it? Yeah. Of which comes first. But just coming back to that idea of having a pure intention, I think that's a really good starting point, isn't it? Yeah. And then any rewards that come after that, it's like a bonus or something.
Yeah, so does the chicken and egg conversation actually need thinking about? Does it matter whether you're, serving others to heal yourself or vice versa? Because the impact on the self and the community is actually the same. So maybe we get tied up too much in the... does it matter which way? Actually, no. I mean, you've said the 5 ways to well-being. We know that this is actually giving is part of healing yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so research does support this fact that people who spend more time serving others or take more of an interest in giving rate themselves as having higher levels of well-being. Yeah. And we know that neuroscience studies show that it's the reward parts of the brain that are triggered, by those kinds of actions. So mutual cooperation is intrinsically rewarding. I mean, I suppose that's why we survived as a species, right? Yeah. That kind of altruism. There's been a whole load of research around that. But just coming back to dental school for a moment, one of the things that has come out in my conversations with students, and this maybe links to the chicken and egg thing, is when people are really struggling to look after themselves.
Yeah.
Because, you've got exams to study for, you've got patients to care for, and, going to the gym, having time with friends and family can be the first thing to go. Yeah. But I always hesitate when I have this conversation with students because sometimes a motivator to help people prioritise self-care as essential is thinking, well, it's going to make you a better dental professional. Do you want to rock up exhausted, no sleep? No, you need to be safe, but also you want to do the best you can for your patients. So for some people, that really chips into that motivation of I'm here to serve others. But then I feel a bit reluctant because I believe that person who's sat in front of me deserves to be well themselves. And that kind of sense of self-worth of you deserve that time and nurture just because you're a person who deserves love and care and attention. Yeah. So it's an interesting one with that chicken and egg thing. If it means that person then starts looking after themselves, well, then that's only a good thing.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's a tricky one.
And I think a lot of it comes down to awareness. So for example, like Seva operates from a place where you see everybody's equal. You're treating the humanity in each person, as you want to put it that way. But to do that, you need to make sure that you're actually recognizing if you're operating for a sense of, oh, I feel good, and I want to, make people know that I do all these kind of things, or is it more of a, this is what the world needs? I think there's a lot of hurt here, and for me personally, I think hurt people hurt other people, but healed people help other people. If you get where I'm coming from, so I think the moment you kind of take that step back and become self-aware, and you kind of notice what thoughts are going through your mind and separating that from what actually makes you, and that's kind of a good place to start, and just be more mindful of what you're doing, so that way you can have an impact on your actions and really make sure you're doing the right thing for the right people around you.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, Gaurav, because that self-awareness has to come first, doesn't it? Particularly when you're serving others, because when it can be so easy to slip into, I'm a kind person, or I'm a good practitioner, therefore this, and actually lose sight of your motivations, or how you are, or of your capabilities that day. I don't know if you've come across the workable ranges model. Sally Rose, who's the head of the Staff Counselling Centre, has done a bit of research in this area. And really, we need a diagram, but I'll do what I can on a podcast. And if you imagine two lines like bandwidth, that's your kind of workable range. You can cope. Okay. And then if you imagine a wiggly line within that bandwidth, that's life's ups
like
and
a
downs.
Sine wave in maths.
Yes.
Okay, first. I'm just nerdy like
Visualize it, yeah, love it. So when you're not okay, your energy levels can ping up out of your workable range into the high energy. So that's what we would associate with symptoms of anxiety, racing thoughts, racing heart. Or you can drop down what we might associate with symptoms around depression, around lethargy, low energy, low motivation. And what we need to do to be okay is be within our workable range, but notice. And that's what you were talking about, having that self-awareness of when we're not. Yeah. Because the more time we spend either in the high anxiety state or the low lethargy, low mood state, we're not okay and we're not ourselves. And the longer you go on, your workable range, that bandwidth, narrows and narrows and narrows until it comes to a point when it's just a dot. And that's burnout. Yeah. So I think that kind of awareness of, I notice I'm a bit jittery today, I'm just going to spend a bit of time on my breath, or, I've got no motivation. I'm just going to go for a 10-minute walk around the block, get moving. So kind of being able to give yourself that antidote and that self-awareness is what's going to keep your cup kind of filled up in order to continue serving others.
So sometimes self-care is an act of selfless service. And sometimes self-care is actually saying, I can't today. Just being aware of what you can bring to the table. But how do we create that community of givers and takers, where that's an acceptable conversation to have? It's okay for me to come into the office and say, today, these are my limits. This is my workable range today. Tomorrow it will be different, but I need to make you aware. And what happens when there's other people in the team who their workable range is changed that day? How do we work as a community when sometimes we may have conflicting needs?
Well, if we want to step into a moment of kind of reflective practice, ideally, we may have had more time to prepare before this podcast, but yesterday I was off on compassionate leave, and, I really appreciated your guys' understanding with that we came in kind of bright and early this morning. But as you've said, at times needs can conflict, and it seemed to work out okay this time round. But, if I had been working with someone who maybe suffers with a bit of anxiety or struggles with last minute things, that would have been really difficult for them. And so I think, having relationships where you feel able to come into work and say, these are my limits, that in itself is amazing, because I think a lot of people in their workplace probably don't feel that way. I feel really grateful that at my time at Leeds, I generally have worked with people where I feel completely able to be open and authentic and to have those conversations. But it's about that community, it's about that trust, and that there are going to be bumps in the road, and at times, sometimes it is going to be tricky, you know, and needs and limits are going to conflict, but just finding a way through that. And I know the VC talks about the values around compassion and inclusion. And it's these kinds of conversations and these relationships where, you know, I hope that we're putting that into practice. Yeah. We feel a bit conflicted about stepping back because I'm the pastoral care advisor, the students need me. But actually being able to say, I'm not okay, I'm not coming to work. Yes, I'm doing that for myself, but equally, I like to think that it's permission giving. You know, when people see other people say, these are my boundaries or these are my limits and this is what I can manage, this is what I can't. I'm hoping that it creates that kind of culture where if the staff are saying that, then maybe it's okay for me to say that.
Yeah. So role modelling. Yeah. A safe practice culture.
Yeah.
That's it. And it sets that culture of like, okay, cool, like what is acceptable, what's not acceptable. Because I think when you're in an environment, it's quite daunting to kind of be a person that will not challenge, we'll say challenge, but like kind of take steps that aren't normally seen. And I think that takes courage. And I think back to, you know, that creating the community, you've got to have courage to kind of see what the culture's like and kind of give it a little touch and know where the boundaries are and just not go over the boundaries, but nudge it a little bit. See, oh, is that a movable boundary where it actually strengthens the community? Or is it not really a boundary that's kind of fixed? Like, that's a no-go, we don't do that. And in turn, if you see someone crossing a no-go boundary, you just pull them to the side and say, like, listen, let's talk about this. What's your thoughts on it? But at the same time, not be fixed within your own thinking.
And where do you think the role of kind of leadership in communities lays? Because, I mean, let's face it, I don't think there's a group of mammals that don't have those kind of leadership roles within their community. But when we're talking about trying to create a community of givers and takers, which is more about allowing to be you and allowing to put yourself first in order to be able to pass that on within the community, do you think that the role of leadership needs to change? Is there a way that actually our leaders can show their self-care to us, but also show their service in other ways just than the traditional I will take control, I will protect you from the big bad wolf at the door?
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about this earlier, and when you've talked, Gaurav, about the acts of service can be small, can be tiny. Yeah. An example that came to mind is earlier this year, we sadly lost a member of our dental community, and it was at Talvin's informal memorial that was held that I noticed that amongst the last people there who were tidying the tables, moving chairs, tidying the rubbish into bags, were the dean of the school and the DSE. And, you know, that was just the most natural, organic thing. There was a couple of people still chatting, tidying things away. But that felt like a real humbling, genuine moment. Yeah. And I'm sure, you know, their calendars and their email inboxes, they had plenty to be rushing off to, but they didn't rush off. Yeah. You know, they served their community, which, I think that'll stay with me. Yeah,
hugely powerful. So I think role modelling is key, and role modelling that we can transition through different stages. You know, you saying you role model by saying, actually, today I can't serve you. Yeah. And, you know, we saw our dental leaders role modelling by showing, I will care for you so you can think about you, by making sure that this isn't a task that's left on your doorstep.
Yeah. And I think with leading, it comes from a place of, I'm on the same page as you. I'm not above you or below you in the sense of like, oh, I'm going to delegate everything towards you, or I'm the big boss and you do what I say. But it's leading front forward with your values in place. And I think as leaders, it's about a case of just purifying yourself, purifying your intentions, purifying your thoughts, purifying your way of life. Because if you're cloudy, then You know, if you're bogged down, if you're not operating from your best self, then how do you expect the people behind you supporting you in the community, in your teams, to be leading with that clarity that you lack? And I think as leaders, and leaders doesn't have to be one or two people, like we can all be leaders in our own way.
Of course.
And, you know, have the power and not feel like we're giving power away, but we'll all have a space and kind of focus on what we have control over.
So how do people learn how to go through those steps that you've just described? Because I think there are many of us, and I'd include myself in this, that, you know, might prefer just to not think about it and just carry on and keep going forward and hope it falls off at the end.
Yeah.
But what you're describing seems to be like a system of work. So how do people learn how to be aware of themselves, to recognise when they're depleted? What can someone who's maybe at the beginning of that journey do to kind of start to take stock, to see if they are all right, to check in with themselves?
Well, this is a skill in itself in cognitive behaviour therapy. It's called metacognition, thinking about thinking. Yeah. And, you know, it is very easy to be caught up in your own head, in your own thoughts. So it's literally a muscle. It's a skill to practice that kind of separation, like you said earlier about, you know, it's not I am sad, I'm noticing I'm feeling sad.
Yeah.
Even that reframing is a very powerful way of holding your emotions and to be curious about this fleeting thought or feeling. Or the other saying is thoughts aren't facts. Yeah. So, you know, people who maybe have dipped into some self-help stuff, there's a lot of resources out there like on Together All, and the Student Counselling Wellbeing Service has a lot of resources as well. Or people who've done therapy will have literally been taught some of these skills, but unless you've purposefully explored that, which not all of us do, you know, often it's until we get to burnout or breaking point that suddenly it's like,
oh, this is relevant now.
Yeah. But no, I have to say I'm really pleased to see that the GDC's new framework does talk more explicitly about mental health and managing mental health. We're kind of acknowledging the last few years that, I mean, obviously it's been difficult for the world, but for dentistry in particular, there has been some real challenges and a real test of that resilience, inverted commas.
Yeah.
But yes, to hear the GDC talking more about mental health is brilliant. Through Curriculum Redefined, there's a lot more of a focus on what skills do we need to teach and learn to deal with the environments that we find ourselves in. But just some small practices, like you said, for someone at the beginning of the journey, like you talked a lot about self-awareness, Gaurav, and taking pause, taking notice is one of the 5 ways to well-being. So it can be as small as, have you heard of the phrase habit stacking? Yeah. If you want to start doing something new, you tie it to something you already do. Okay. The classic example is teeth brushing, but it's like, no, dental students spend enough time talking about teeth. So one of the other examples is every time you wash your hands for it should be 20 seconds now, post-COVID, notice the temperature of the water. Listen to the sound of, I'm closing my eyes. You can, you listen to the sound of the water splashing in the sink. You kind of feel the soap and the bubbles in your hand. You smell the bubbles. Now, we wash our hands how many times a day? But just that pause throughout your day can sometimes be enough to just reset slightly. And like I say, it's a muscle. So just practicing those tiny moments of mindfulness. Or the other one, I speak to very, very busy dental students who have not got time for an hour to go to the gym. Have they got time to have a cup of tea and switch their phone off? We love airplane mode, don't we? And just enjoy that cup of tea while doing nothing. I mean, it's a tricky one. And I do actually struggle with that myself because the impulse is to go for your phone. But I think doing those small practices and building that into your routine is the teeny tiny drop of filling up your cup. Yeah. And it's that beginning of that process of becoming more self-aware. So it hopefully doesn't get to that point of burnout where you're not fit to be on clinic and you're not okay and you need to take temporary leave. Like, obviously that's kind of way, way further down the line. But where we start to create that culture of, are you okay?
Yeah.
And there's that time to change campaign called Ask Twice. Are you really okay?
Yeah.
And, you know, when someone asks you that in that really genuine human way and you realize, wow, they've seen that I'm not okay. And maybe I'm not going to open up on clinic. We'll talk about it after. Right now, I am okay to push through. Yeah. But this evening, I need to not study. I need to just take a break and recharge.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. And I think when you hear that, you got to make sure you're doing okay. And it's important to be asked twice and feel heard and listened to. I think dental students, we're a group of people, obviously there's exceptions to this group, but, you know, we're high achievers. We want to do the best. You know, we're on a degree because we care about people. We want to, you know, make sure that whatever we're doing, if it is our patients, if it's our team, we want to make sure that they're doing okay. And we'll happily, you know, cut a little bit of our own plate to make sure that they're doing good. But without checking in and stuff, it's going to go back to the cup. We're going to keep pouring from an empty cup, and it's going to be harmful, and you're actually going to achieve more harm than any good. You might be one conversation away from breaking down or snapping at someone, and you know, in terms of the community and the people you're around, they're not going to appreciate you when you're snapping at them. They're going to appreciate you being harmful or hurtful with your words or with your tone or your actions. Because once the way I see it is that once you're like, your mind, your thoughts, your words, your tone, your behavior is out of tune and out of sync, you're just going to cause disharmony. And if there's harmony within inside you, then how are people around you going to feel harmonious?
It brings me back to something that Simon Fleming said in the Better Me launch. And he said that with a group of trainees, he drew a graph and he asked people to come up and mark on the graph what level of stress is an acceptable point where you actually go, oh no, it was fine to make that racist comment. It was fine to make to actually publicly humiliate someone. What level of stress does that actually become acceptable? And of course, everybody was like, what? But in the idea, we all kind of try to justify, I snapped, but because X. And actually, if that but because came before, then that in itself going, do you know what? I'm not okay. I just need to back out for a bit. Is an act of protection, is an act of selfless service by taking the time to be aware. Because as Simon rightly pointed out, there is no place, no level of stress where it is okay to let your standards fall to a place where you are harming others. So really, it brings us back to a better me is the first step. Now, Gaurav, you were kind of part of the Better Me, Better You process from the beginning. And when we were developing, what do we call this? We kind of started with the student community research. And then we were like, well, it's not just about students, it's about staff. So students and staff community research. And we were trying to break down, what is it that we're trying to achieve? What is it that we're asking people to do? And it was those steps, that ripple effect that started with us. I can't control anybody's behaviour. I can't try and change the culture or improve the culture of the dental school. I can't. It's not in my locus of control, like you said. But what I can do is look to myself. I can try and be aware of the fact that I'm not a perfect human. I am going to make mistakes. And when I do make mistakes, I'm going to apologise for them. That takes bravery. And that takes a culture where it is safe. But if I can create that tiny space of safety with my own actions, then that passes on to my wider team, who then interact with the team and other students, and hopefully empower them to actually have that safe space where I can say, I'm not all right today, or I'm absolutely fabulous today. I'm looking to myself so that I can make you better, I can make us better. So what are your thoughts on kind of how selfless service and self-care links to the Better Me, Better You, Better Us initiative.
Well, just picking up on what you were saying before, see, my frame of reference, having spent another life, many years in the School of Sociology and Social Policy, I can't help but think in terms of like individual agency within wider structures and cultures. So that's why I love the name of this campaign so much, Better Me, You, Us. It's kind of capturing those different layers that we operate in. So like you said, kind of being aware of yourself and how you interact with those in your immediate team, but then how that has that ripple effect. And I mean, I touched on talking about GDC framework standards of the dental team, and from my own background profession, the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy's ethical framework talks a lot about self-respect and how we look after ourselves, not just to avoid kind of harm to a patient. Yes, there's risk to manage, but equally us as individuals and practitioners have self-worth and value
we deserve
ourselves.
it.
Yeah. So I really liked that kind of, that we can maybe borrow from other professions as well, right? So yeah, just thinking that yes, we have these wider policies. We have, we've talked about 5 ways to well-being.
Yeah.
You know, there are these wider initiatives, but equally the starting point is going to be ourselves. And I think, you know, we've been talking about selfless service and self-care, but have been talking a lot about self-awareness. And it's interesting how that taking notice aspect of 5 ways to well-being is so inherently connected. Similarly with connecting, that's another one of the 5 ways to well-being. And it kind of feels like a thread that's gone through all of these discussions, because it's those human relationships and it's those meaningful connections that when you turn up to work and you feel okay enough to say, this is how I am, and or on the flip side, how can I help you out today? What do you need? It's those smaller conversations that are the catalyst for the broader cultural change, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think it's just empowering yourself and that focus of control of like, this is what you can do. Go do something about it, and being aware and taking those steps in and just communicating it. And you're not going to get it right all the time, and like, no one's asking you to get it right every single time all the way, but you giving it a shot is way better than you not even acknowledging it. So
Yeah. I think, you know, if we're going to sum up some take-home messages and just make those final links, I think from our conversations, the clear message is that selfless service, so thinking of others, directly benefits the community and us. But for us to be able to do that, we need to be able to have permission, and for it to be acceptable within our community to take time for self-awareness and for self-care. And it brings me back to one of the kind of key take-homes from the Promoting Professionalism conference that I attended at Nashville by Vanderbilt University, who are, of course, the people who designed and developed the professionalism pyramid and the cup of coffee conversation. And one of their key baseline starting points is that to change a community, you have to be able to create an environment where people can self-regulate and peer-regulate. And that, to me, is that a summary of what we're trying to do. You know, we need to be able to self-regulate, I need an awareness. To be able to peer-regulate, I need that environment where it's okay, it's acceptable, it's normal, and it's safe for me to say, are you okay? No. Are you really okay? And we don't have to fix people. In fact, often that, I think, can be a place where we fall down. I'm definitely a rescuer, and I try not to rescue so much. Now I've had the time to become more aware that I'm a rescuer. Because, you know, most of the time, what people want is to feel heard and seen. Thinking of those 2 instances that I mentioned right at the beginning, where you didn't do anything major, but you made me feel heard and seen, and that was actually more powerful than any grand gestures or what have you. So sometimes we don't have to fix, we just have to say, I've seen you. And that's a big deal for people. So passing off on that kind of better me to the better you
Yeah.
until we become better us.
People think of strength as keeping going.
Yes.
And there is a little bit around trying to change the narrative of sometimes it shows a lot of strength to step back.
Yeah.
And I use this metaphor a lot in sometimes you need to step forward, sometimes you need to step back, but I don't know which one it is for you today.
No.
And maybe you don't either, but maybe you need to have a chat with, a doctor, counsellor, whoever, to make that decision. But for me, it is about changing the culture and that norm that, what's that saying? If you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when we get to that point of self-care is essential, it's not an add-on. Self-care isn't, hot chocolate and fairy lights or spa days. Like self-care is sometimes washing up or doing the bills.
Yeah.
But that's what you might need to do to kind of keep your life functioning.
Yeah.
But yeah, that self-care is essential for you because you have that inherent worth, and because, as we've been talking about, whether it's serving your patients, your friends, your family, your community, like you need to be okay in order to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is a wonderful place to wrap up our conversation. So thank you, Gaurav and Liz, very much
Thank you.
for this very interesting conversation on selfless service and self-care.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Tamara.
Tamara.